I'm Ciarán Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc sheep podcast. Each episode will bring latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. With a lot of surplus silage coming off farms at the moment and indeed first cuts finishing up, it's an opportune time to talk about how we replace these offtakes and how we do maintain soil fertility. In this episode I'm joined by Mark Plunkett. He's a soil and plant nutrition specialist with Teagasc to discuss some of these areas and some of the key aspects of maintaining soil fertility. Mark starts off discussing the importance of replacing P&K offtakes from surplus silage. We discuss the fertiliser requirements for those considering second cut, with Mark outlining a number of different fertiliser options. Mark discusses why sulphur inclusion in the compound you're using is an important consideration, highlighting the response achieved on a range of soils. We discuss the benefits of low emission slurry spreading at this stage of the season, and we move on to discuss lime usage nationally and why current ground conditions provide an ideal opportunity for those considering applying some to correct some of the soil pH issues and the cost benefit we see with that. We finish up discussing the use of protected urea as a choice of end fertiliser at this stage of the season, but we start off with Mark highlighting why it's important to address some key aspects of soil fertility.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to growing grass, Ciarán, I suppose the starting point really is getting, lime P&K right in terms of producing tons of grass during the growing season at key times. And lime is probably the first area to look at in terms of maintaining soil pH around 6.3 to 6.5. I suppose the one thing about dry stock farms, especially on the grazing side, Ciarán, is that there's a low requirement for both P&K, but the opposite is very much true on the silage side of the house, that we must be aiming for optimum indexes, number one, in terms of index 3 for P&K, and then there is a bigger requirement for P&K anywhere that you're cutting either hay or grass silage.
Just when you mentioned that, Mark, like we've had strong grass growth rates in recent weeks, a lot will have took the option of taking out that surplus grass. Maybe it's compensating for a lower yield of silage earlier in the year. The need to replenish the P's and K's in them offtakes is probably underestimated how much P&K we remove with surplus silage.
Yeah, if you take your first cut grass silage, Ciarán, we're taking out somewhere in the region of, say, we're talking, say, maybe 8 tons of fresh grass coming out per acre. We're talking 16 units per acre of phosphorus and approximately 100 units per acre of potassium. And then anywhere that you're taking out, say, strong paddocks, again, you're taking off, significant amounts of P&K in those cuts, in those bales of silage. So again, very, very important to replenish or replace that P&K to maintain fertility on those parts of the farm.
Probably a bit easier if there's availability of slurry on these farms, Mark, but for those that wouldn't have slurry, you're looking at going back in with a chemical compound to replenish that P&K offtake.
Yeah, very much. Where slurry is available on the farm, it makes life very, very easy because, 2,500 gallons of good quality cattle slurry will replace the majority of P's and K's coming out in that first cut of grass silage. I suppose where there isn't cattle slurry available, then you're looking to, a fertilizer compound, something like a 13,620, which would be, quite available out there, or maybe something like a 15,320. Depending on your P limits or your P allowances on the farm.
Probably not familiar to some, but they definitely are more available than they were in previous years. Like for those, Mark, considering a second cut, maybe to bulk up supplies, first cut probably closed up a bit later this year. Some have regrazed it. Yield might have been in it. For second cut silage, what's your target recommendation? Obviously, yields are going to be less. So how much NP&K should we be considering?
If we take that we're growing, say, 3 tons of dry matter, grass dry matter, or say 6 tons of fresh grass, Ciarán, your NPK requirement there is 60 units of nitrogen, 10 units of phosphorus, 60 units of potassium. So again, if cattle slurry was available on the farm, you're looking at the program would be 2,000 gallons per acre of cattle slurry plus a bag and a quarter of protected urea plus sulphur. And that is the 40% sulphur plus 6%. Sorry, the 40% nitrogen plus 6% sulphur. For cattle slurry is not available on farms. Again, a good fertilizer option there, Ciarán, again, is a compound, something like a 15,320 plus sulphur, and top it up then with 0.4 to half a bag of protected urea plus sulphur.
Mark, like you mentioned sulphur there, it's probably one of the overlooked compounds going out, and even in my question earlier, I overlooked it. Like that has an impact on yield. A lot of the compounds now are coming with that included in it.
Yes, I suppose sulfur is one nutrient that there is less coming from the atmosphere or from the rain that we get during the year. So again, it is very, very important to apply the recommended rate of sulfur. It's very, very important in terms of nitrogen efficiency. So again, it makes the nitrogen work for us a lot more efficiently. And it tends to be on, I suppose, the lighter soils tend to be most responsive. Like there is a lot of work going on in Johnstown Castle as we speak here on, and the type of yield responses that we're seeing on heavy soils, we're seeing somewhere in the region of about a ton per hectare. So about a 10% yield response to applying sulfur during the growing season. On your loamy soils, we're looking at about a 20% up to a 25% yield response to sulfur. So you grow an extra, say if you're growing 10 tons of dry matter, you grow an extra 2.5 tons of dry matter by putting in sulfur. Very, very important, as I say, in terms of nitrogen efficiency. And on those light soils and anywhere that you're intensively cutting grass, we're seeing up to a 35% of a yield response. So that's a big, big yield response on those light soils. They're very free draining. They're low in soil organic matter. They have little ability to hold on to nutrients. So that's where we're seeing the big, big responses. So most definitely, if you're picking a fertilizer compound for your second cut silage, very, very important to get one that contains sulfur in the blend or the straight nitrogen, like the protected urea plus sulfur is a very, very good option there. The 40% plus 6% sulfur is a great way of getting sulfur into the mix as well.
Like that kind of response rate, Mark, it certainly can't be overlooked in any of your fertilizer programs.
Absolutely. Like the thing about sulfur, Ciarán, is that we don't need a lot of it. Like on grazing ground, you're talking, say, 10 to 15 units max per year. And you're generally going out, in the once you hit peak grass growth, April, May, June, July time. That's where you see the best response to sulfur. And then our advice for second cut silage, for that 6 ton of fresh grass per acre, like we have a requirement of about 10 units per acre. So that's why I'm suggesting to you something like the 15-3-20 plus sulfur. It would have 3% sulfur, and then you could put in a little bit of protected urea with sulfur as well to get those 10 units in. Very, very important.
It's balancing it well. Look, when you spoke about nitrogen efficiency, there's probably two other key areas we should touch on. Even though it's the sheep side of the house, like there's a lot of cattle slurry being used. We see a lot more low emission slurry tankers in the country. It has a big impact, Mark, on nitrogen efficiency. Probably in these dry conditions, we're looking at there's big benefits there in terms of slurry not crusting on top of the ground either, with going with that method. But just maybe the recap, like the difference in efficiency going from a low emission to a splash plate.
Yeah, you're looking at a 50% improvement, Ciarán, in nitrogen efficiency or nitrogen recovery. So if we're spreading slurry today with a splash plate, where we will recover about 3 units per 1,000 gallons. And if we move to a low emission slurry spreader with a band spreader or a trailing shoe, we can double that. We can get 6 units of nitrogen per 1,000 gallons. And it's very much down that, you're placing the slurry in a band, you're placing it under the grass or very, very close to the soil surface. And that's how we're reducing the ammonia or increasing the recovery of nitrogen from that slurry. And I suppose the other big benefit is that as well, Ciarán, is that we're not soiling the grass. So if there is a cover of grass there, we can go in and we are, reducing the surface area. We're not soiling that grass. We're getting the slurry under the grass canopy. And I suppose one of the other big benefits as well there is that we're getting a more precise application or delivery of the NPK across the spread width of the spreader. So there's big, big benefits, both in terms of nitrogen recovery and also environmentally in terms of moving to the low emission slurry. Like we are getting more nitrogen out of our slurry, and that means that we're purchasing or using less chemical nitrogen. And that's a double win there in terms of it's a lower expense on farm, and also environmentally it's a big win.
No, it's clear benefits, and I think that's obvious when we look, Mark. I see more than being around the country. There is a big uptake in that. Look, the other big one, it's every single year we talk about this, but it's the other thing that really has a massive impact on nitrogen efficiency, fertility, responsible getting that's lime. I suppose conditions in some ways with silage being taken off fields at the moment, it's ideal to be considering lime application at the moment. Like, are we seeing any improvement in the amount of lime being used on farms, or is it still a challenge for us to get more used?
Yes, I suppose to answer the first part of your question there, Ciarán, yes, we have seen an increase in the usage of lime over the last 5 years. We're using approximately 20% more lime nationally. We're hitting on close on 1 million tons. We were somewhere around 700,000-800,000 tons, per year over the last 5 years. But we have increased, but we haven't increased by enough. We probably need to spread another 50%. We probably need to hit 1.5 million tons and above to get our pHs to where they should be. And most definitely for the time that we live in, and in terms of nitrogen efficiency, lime is the place to start. In terms of there's tons of nitrogen in our soils, organic matter. And by getting the pH right, we release or we provide the conditions for the fungi, the bacteria, the earthworms to mineralize that nitrogen. And we can mineralize somewhere in the region of 70 kilograms of N per hectare per year. That's how much nitrogen that we can mineralize. So there's loads of nitrogen there. So by just spreading lime and getting the pH right, we unlock or make that nitrogen more available. And again, that puts us in the position to save money and reduce the amount of chemical nitrogen that we purchase on our farms. And I suppose the other big benefit then is phosphorus. Like it unlocks or makes phosphorus and potassium more available in our soils. But we are now at a key time, Ciarán, in the year. It's an opportune time to spread lime, especially at the first cut silage, where we're not taking a second cut of silage to get out and apply what's recommended based on the soil test report. And the same on grazing ground, that we should order a load of lime, say 20 or 25 tons, and spread maybe 10 or 15 acres of the farm, depending on how much lime we need. And it's very important that we get our pHs in that sweet spot, that 6.3 to 6.5 in terms of nutrient efficiency, and especially in terms of nitrogen. We're getting more out of nitrogen on all fronts, whether it's the soil, the bag, farm manure, cattle slurry. It makes it more available for the grass plant to take up and utilize.
Like Mark, particularly for dry stock farms out there, they tend to be lower overall fertilizer input. It's the obvious one to go with. It's probably the cheapest source of fertilizer we can use on farms.
Yeah. Look, by just getting the pH right alone, Ciarán, we can grow an extra 10-15% grass. Like we can grow an extra ton and a half of dry matter annually there for a very low input. Like, lime it's you're talking somewhere like 20-25 euros per ton delivered and spread. We generally talk about, say a ton per hectare. That's what we utilize annually. So if you spread, say, 5 tons per hectare now, which is 2 tons per acre, that'll do you for 5 years, and it's a very, very low cost. It's costing about a tenner an acre in terms of maintenance. But the payback is massive.
It's like a lot of these things, Mark. Once farmers start using it, you see the benefits of it straight away. It's just starting off in that process again. Look, just I suppose maybe finally, like the one other big change in the last couple of years has been the switch over to protected urea, particularly for use during the summer season.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very efficient form of nitrogen. It's urea plus a urease inhibitor. It gives the same results as CAN. It's slightly cheaper. From an environmental point of view, it's very beneficial from a nitrous oxide point of view, because it's protected urea is an ammonia-based fertilizer compared to CAN. So again, it reduces our nitrous oxide emissions. There is a range of products there on the market. There's also a product there with potash and sulphur. So again, if you had a party or maybe silage ground, for example, that you want to get some potash out or build, that product will be very, very suitable. And yes, it's a direct replacement for CAN. And again, it'll work the very, very same as CAN under the conditions that we have at present. This is when it actually works best in the drier, more challenging conditions. You get the same results as you would with a CAN-based fertilizer.
Certainly an option that should be considered most times. Mark, it was great having you on.
No problem, Ciarán. All the best.
Okay, we're going to wrap things up at this point. Great getting Mark on and getting his insights on a number of them areas. Look, maintaining soil fertility is one of the key tasks on farm each year. It's what is a key driver behind our grass production and most of our systems that we're developing. I suppose one of the key things Mark highlighted there, then addressing any pH issues is starting point for any of these programs, and it's probably the simplest thing we can do on farms. And there's a good opportunity with ground conditions at the moment to address some of them issues. And again, also replacing our P&K offtakes and appropriately dealing with that during the year is vital. That's it for me for this episode. Again, for any updates from our sheep programme, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Ciarán Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and you can listen in to any of our episodes.